Hello everyone and welcome to a new tutorial. In this tutorial, we will learn how to use GraphQL with NextJS. As we have heard about NextJS in the latest period of time, NextJS gains a lot of popularity, so we will use this great tool with the great GraphQL. We need to start a new Next.js project using npx, which is npm package runner that enables you to run some package without any installation. npx create next app at latest, then the name of the app, which will be my app. After installation has finished, you'll need to navigate to the folder of the application. After that, we will need to install 3 main packages. Those packages will help us in integrating GraphQL within our project. Those are the GraphQL itself, npm install GraphQL, and this package enables us to use the main functionalities of GraphQL. And another one for GraphQL client, we will use to install Apollo client. And for sure, if you want to know what is the client and what is the server of GraphQL, you can visit our introduction to GraphQL video attached in the description below. Then you will need to install GraphQL Yoga node, and this for providing the server for sure. Then hit enter. Let's now open the application in our code editor. I prefer Visual Studio Code, and you can use the code editor you prefer for sure. Now we need some dummy data to start manipulation on it. So let's create a new file in the root directory called data.json, and I have attached the link to the article below in the description box. You can visit it and grab the dummy data, and you can provide dummy data by yourself for sure. Here is our dummy data. And after that, we need to configure the GraphQL client. Let's start doing this by creating a new file, calling it Apollo client.ts. In Apollo client, we will need to import some from Apollo client package for sure, the Apollo client builder, and another thing called in-memory cache. In-memory cache is a special builder that helps us with providing a cache assistant for our application. And for sure, you don't need to know about this advanced concept for now, but you may remember it just to store data in the browser. So if the client needs this data again, it does not have to go to the server again, just grab it from the cache. Const client equal new Apollo client, then invoke. Apollo client takes 2 properties. The first is URI, and URI is for the URL to the GraphQL server. It will be here locally, so we will need to provide local host 3000 API and GraphQL. We are going to make this file now, but let's continue configuring the client. And the second is the cache, and this cache will take an instance of in-memory cache. Then export by default the client. After configuration of the client, we will need now to configure the server. Go to Pages, and in Pages open API directory and create a new file. This file will be graphql.js. We didn't use TypeScript templates, so we don't have to name this TS for TypeScript, just JS file. And go here to GraphQL. In GraphQL, we need to import a certain method from GraphQL Yoga node, and this is called create server. Then const server, let's create an instance, create server, and create server will need us to provide a configuration object as well. Firstly, the endpoint, and this endpoint is where the server lives. API and graph GraphQL. As you see here, we type localhost 3000, then API, then GraphQL. Then this part or this path is called the endpoint for the GraphQL server. Then export this server by default. Here we need to configure a schema. And schema consists of two things, the type definitions and the resolvers. And for sure, we have introduced the both concepts in a previous video, and I'll attach the video below for sure. You can refer to it to know the difference between the type definitions and the resolvers. Here we need now to configure some type definitions and some resolvers. So create a new file in the root directory, and this file will be GraphQL schema.js. And in GraphQL schema, we will start typing the type definitions equal. We need it to be GraphQL template string and start. We will start with type query, and this will be the entry point of GraphQL for query requests for sure, because GraphQL can make queries, can make mutations, and finally it can subscribe to the server. And in it, we need to provide the entry points for the query. The first one is users. This is for the whole user, and it's of type an array of the user type, and we're going to define this user type soon. The second is single user, and in this user we need to return only one user. But for sure, another tip, when we need to retrieve only one user, we will need to provide its ID. So we will expect here to take an ID, and this ID will be of type ID, and this ID type is specific for GraphQL. Then the user type user, and this type will contain ID of type ID, and the exclamation mark indicates that this element is required. The second is user name of type string, and it's required for sure. Then first name of type string, last name string, and hobbies, it's an array of strings. We will need now to configure the resolvers. Const resolvers. Resolver object is a mirror for the request object that will be sent by the client. We will start with an entry point, which is the query. And in this query, we will provide the functionalities or the resolvers we want to be sent from the client. The first will be the users. Users will be the first entry point, and it will be a method, and this method return the data, the whole data. We need to import the data from the JSON file. So import data from data.json, then return data.whole users. After that, another entry point, which is the single user, and in this single user we expect an ID. But here's a tip. The first param is the previous object, which for a field on the root query, but we won't need this so much, so leave it as it. And the second is the object of the actual arguments passed to this resolver, which will contain the real ID. After that, complete the declaration and return data.users.find, and we need to find one element. So user, and return the user ID, which equals to the provided ID in the argument. Collect now both objects in single const schema equal type definitions and resolvers. Then export by default the schema object. Get back now to the server, and in server import this configuration. So import schema from GraphQL schema and provide here schema simply. For now, we have configured the server and the client. We have a full functioning GraphQL components, and we need to start implementing it within our application. In pages, we will need to create a new page. This page will be users.js. We will grab this template and paste it here. And we don't need this footer. Remove it. As well as we don't need all this fill. Remove them as well. And our data will go here. Great. To accomplish our mission, we need to import some modules. First will be the client from our Apollo client here. And second will be a helper method from GraphQL from Apollo client. Third will be some hooks from React, use state and use effect as well. We will need both of them. Let's start a state now. Const users and set users equal use state, and we'll start with an empty array. Then in the effect we will make a call to the backend. We need this call to run for the first time only, so provide an empty array. Here we'll use a functional pattern called the immediately invoked function expression. Because we cannot mark this function as async, we need to provide an inner function. So we just provide two parentheses, and in the first parenthesis the declaration of the function goes, and the second parenthesis for invocation. Here mark it as async and start your function declaration. We will make a GraphQL query to the GraphQL server. So const and destruct from client.query provide a certain GraphQL query. We will use GraphQL, and it will be for sure a GraphQL query. So use the template, and in template provide the mirror as we said before. The query, which is the entry point, open an object, then users, and we want to retrieve the ID and the user name. Very simple, but here we need to wait for this query to be resolved and destruct the data arrived. Simply now set users to data.users. Data object is expected to hold users object. If you get back to the GraphQL server, GraphQL schema, you can see we return the whole users, and we expect to get ID and username as array of users. Get back now. And to improve our situation, we need to expect any error and handle it. So we'll use try catch block and move this whole to the try block. Then log any error to the console. Let's now show user cards in the UI. So scroll down, and here start now to execute JavaScript snippet. First, we need to check that users array, which is the state above, has a length. Okay, if it has a length, so user are retrieved, we need now to map through the whole users and expect user, then return certain JSX. In this JSX, we need to retrieve link. So let's import link from next first. Here, import link from next link, red, and in it href, and this href will go to a path that will be built in the future. This path will be user, then slash, and inject user.id. Then provide a key. This key will be user.id as well. Here in link, start defining a div and give it a style. So class name will be styles.card. H2 element for user.username. Then a paragraph to just say this is a user. Let's now start the development server. Hit yarn dev. Then go to the browser and hit localhost. You can see the next application. We need now to visit user's path. We have something went wrong and we need to discover it. Alright, in GraphQL schema, here, this name must be type diffs, not type def. Then export it in the object. If you get back now to the browser, you will see the data rendered successfully in our user's path. Let's practice a bit more. We need to create another path. Here, create a new folder called user. And in this folder, we need to add a dynamic root. This dynamic root will be id.js. Go to user's page and grab the whole code, then paste it here, and we will do some little modifications. Firstly, we need to import use router from next router. After that, we need this to be only one user, and this will start as an empty object. Here it needs to be use router and call use router on top level. So const router equal use router. Then go to the async await here, and we need to perform a query to the backend for sure, as we have done, but we need to change little things. First, from here, the struct from router.query, the ID. For sure, this ID will refer to this dynamic root. After this, the query will be tailed in another fashion. This won't be the users, so remove all this and provide the other resolver, user. And ID will be this ID. But we can't do this here in a template string. We need to inject a dynamic value. Okay? We can use it simply like this. But we have another problem. The argument must be string in GraphQL. And to make it a string, we need to provide double quote here and there around this. And the code will work very fine after that. We need to retrieve the ID, the username, the first name, last name, and hobbies. After that, set user data.user. Get down now to the card. We don't need this iteration. Remove the whole snippet. And here we need to inject JSX div. The class name need to be styles.card as before. And in it h2 user.username paragraph of grab this and copy it. We are gonna need a user.first name, user.last name, and finally user.hobbies.join to be like this. Great. Let's try now. Come here, reload the page, and in users, hit on a single user. Styles module lies on a different level. We need to correct this. And as well the Apollo client. Okay. And we have another error as well. For sure, firstly, there will be no user. And after that, we are going to execute this snippet before any user is retrieved from the backend. And we are asking for a lot of properties in this user. To solve this issue, we will make a condition. Come here and wrap this like this in a JavaScript block. And in this block, check firstly if we have got user. For sure, user is defined because it's an object, so we will start user as null value. After that, we will see this is safety check. User is null, this won't be executed. After user is retrieved and the component is re-rendered, this snippet will be executed safely. If we get back now to our browser and start to visit any of those users, we will see the whole data of the user rendered successfully and the other user as well. And each page is specific for its own user.